Hello, Professor. My name is Catherine Kreitler Gonzalez. I figure I would do my feedback in a video. I never done this before, so I hope I do it well. The first question is asking what standards I use, what strategies, and what was my objective, and what did I do. So my standards, I actually found two that I thought fit perfectly. One was ELA literacy. For literature, 8.4, determine or clarify the meaning of unknown and multiple meaning words or phrases based on grade 8 reading and content, choosing flexibility from a range of strategies. And the main way I did this, where I complied with the standard, was by pre-teaching and discussing unfamiliar words, words that maybe they had never been exposed to because of their age, their language or from their background, or the culture. Maybe this something doesn't happen on their culture, so it's new to them. So I created this sheet because this is something I actually would have done in my classroom. Color coding to kind of help remember what the different words are, doing pictures to help with my English language learners, and also to help them memorize what each thing was. So these are words that I picked that I felt, especially for somebody not familiar in the English language, they wouldn't know what these words mean. And somebody from a different culture may have never experienced some of these things, like being on the heat or being an eldest brother, or what does a murky water look like, what does junk mean. So those are words that I kind of thought they weren't very necessarily familiar for anyone or for everyone. So those are the ones I chose. And I started my read aloud discussing these words because I use my girls as guinea pigs, as my students. The youngest is going on to 4th, the oldest is going on to 6th. So I went over the words with them because some of these words were for sure not familiar to them. I'm not entirely sure that for 8th graders it also will be familiar, but considering that I have special education students and students that are English language learners, I think it will be appropriate to do these words, color code, and also do pictures that better show. So the idea behind it was that before I read the story, we have had a lesson on these words, and we kind of have built background knowledge through that. So probably in a classroom environment, the way I would have started, instead of automatically picking these words, I would have asked them first what these words mean, and had them on the board, and then put their opinions and what they knew about them, so then we could discover what was correct, what was a misconception, and help define them from everyone. Depending on how much time I had, I would have done activities like that, because I think it will be more engaging and they will be learning at a higher level. But if I didn't have a whole lot of time, then maybe I would have just picked the words by myself and defined them myself. Ideally, though, I would have done it with them. And different way I could have done that too could have been in different groups. They were assigned different dictionaries, and they had to look up on their dictionaries, and then together we put it like a big puzzle. The other standard that I thought was very fitting was the ELA literacy W810 for writing, 810, a grade standard 10 for writing. Write routinely over extended time frames, time for research, which that would have been that activity, looking under dictionaries what the words mean, reflection, and revision. So, well, I'll go that in a second. And shorter time frames, a single sitting or a day or two, for a range of discipline-specific tasks, purposes, and audiences. So that is when I use this strategy, which actually I kind of combined two strategies from the two books. So in the Reading Sarabello book, there's a strategy called Show Your Thinking, and it's 13.2. And the way it works is, as a student is reading a text or listening to it, if they have the writing on their hands, which in this case I would have printed copies for them to have it, they will have sticky notes or post-it notes like this one, And they could use this coding to write how they felt as I was listening to the story or reading it by themselves. So this is kind of to show their thinking of how they're reading. If there is something important, then they would make a line. If it's something really surprising or shocking, an exclamation point. If it's something they really liked, it was their favorite part, they put a heart. Something they still kind of don't understand or they're confused about, a question mark. And something that helped them make a prediction of what was coming next, they could do like little clouds. So they could also use the colors, or they could just do the drawings. But I use this for two purposes in two different ways. So for example, from the reading strategy book, this would have been good for students to kind of show their thinking about the text. But on the writing side, so there's a writing strategy 1017 that's called Code the Text. And that strategy is kind of helps the students to write about what they read. So at the beginning of the lesson, I kind of explain that this coding, which it's assumed that I already taught them this strategy. So they kind of were having a refresh or a review on it. But this was the very first time. Like the very first time I taught it, I would have lots and lots of examples. I wouldn't have just told them, this is what you're going to do, and let's go on. Now we would have practiced. But for the purpose of the read aloud, I kind of reminded them or this strategy and went over it really quickly. And so the idea was that as I was reading, they would use the sticky notes to show their thinking. And then after the read aloud was over, they were gonna write based on using their notes to help them. I thought these things were important. I was very surprised about blah, blah, blah. I really like this and this and this. I really do not understand, or I'm confused about this other thing. So it was going to help them write. And then I explained on the read aloud that they were going to partner up, and their partner was going to use the same method to code each other's writing. So for example, my two daughters were gonna be their partners, and one will write about it. Well, they both will write about it using their post-it notes from the text. And then when they were done writing, or maybe the following day, they will switch and they will code each other's text and ask questions about what they were confused about, what the other person meant when they wrote this or that. And maybe when they said something, it kind of made them think that they meant this, but they kind of predicted something, but it wasn't very clear. So they double checking. They really liked the way that they used something or a thought they had from the text, or etc. Something like that, right? So those were my two strategies that I kind of turned into one to conduct the lesson. So the main objective from the lesson was to be able to kind of think about what they're listening to or they're reading, and then they're able to write a response about what they read. So something to note on the read aloud, I kind of rushed through it because I knew 15 minutes wasn't going to be a long time. I think depending on how long I would have been with the students is whether I would have broken up into a couple days or I would have done it all in one sitting. But for starters, I think this would have been my second read. Probably it wouldn't have been my first read of the text because I was asking a lot of questions. But in a real scenario, I would have waited. I would have given them more time to think, more time to discuss. I would have asked a lot of more questions. So then again, these are things I'm really aware of and I normally do. But for the purpose of the video, I was kind of trying to go fast because there was a lot that I kind of wanted to show. And also, because English is not my first language, I do mispronounce sometimes. And typically, I will take the time to, this is my little one, Victoria, I'm doing homework. Sophia, I'm doing homework. I would take the time to correct. And sometimes they would tell me, Miss.K, that's not how you say this or this or that. And I'm like, oh, you're right. This is how you say it. Or I'm sorry, I really have a hard time saying that word. And so, but on this scenario, I was trying to go fast, so I didn't necessarily make all those corrections. This is a note I wanted to tell you. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about what makes this text culturally relevant based on the checklist that you provided. So first of all, I chose this book instead of one on my own because the ones I have I didn't feel were appropriate for 8th grade, and also probably not, they would have been too long and not culturally enough. I don't know, I wasn't sure, so I thought it would be best to use yours. So I use the one with the coyote where the boy goes to find his dad. So what causes conflict and how is it resolved? Well, there's conflict because the dad doesn't, well, it could be a variety of things, right? So first, the dad doesn't show. And well, first of all, there's conflict because dad has to leave, go to the US to get a job because, to be able to provide for his family. Then there's conflict that he doesn't show up. So then the boy leaves to go find him. Then the coyote tricks him and tries to take advantage of him. And then the dad comes and save him. So there is a variety of different ways of what causes conflict, and it could be different solutions. So, for example, the dad came and rescued the boy, so that's how the coyote trying to trick him got resolved. But the fact that the dad had to leave to go have a job abroad, it wasn't ultimately resolved because at the end you are left with that sense of, if it doesn't rain, I may have to do this again next time or next season or next year. I think the conflict and the ways resolved, it's appropriate because it's true. It's not using what do you call it, generalizations or prejudice. I think it's something that's very true to how it gets resolved and to what really happens. Which characters change? Outside the coyote is the one that changed. He seems to want to be really helpful at first, and then it turns out he's trying to take advantage of the boy and trick him. And which ones do not? Ultimately, everybody else doesn't change. Like the dad and the family is trying, to get a better life and to be able. He's trying to support his family, and the family loves him and is trying to be with him and whatnot. Who makes the decisions? Who follows orders? The coyote for a lot of the text is the one kind of making the decisions, and the boy is kind of following along because all he cares about is to see his dad and be with his dad. And I think that also speaks to the truth. Like a lot of times, these people come and they have to follow what the leaders or the coyotes, in real life, the coyotes say, um, even though might not be the best thing, but they trust them and they think if they follow them, they will be able to get what they need to get. They're shown as good people and just trying to do the right thing, or not do the right thing necessarily, but what I mean is like it's showing he just wants to be with his dad. Like he's not trying to do a bad thing, and that's trying to work. Honestly, he's not trying to do something bad. So I think that kind of shows how different people are following the orders for different reasons. And who speaks and who is silent or silence? I think everybody does have a voice. Nobody that I can remember actually was silenced. And whose interests are served? In general, aside from the coyote, really no one's. I mean, all they're doing is trying to survive, trying to do what it takes to survive. And who's privileged by the story? Well, evidently, even though it's never mentioned, you can assume from the text that it is better on the other side because that has to come so far away to work because he can't work where he lives. So obviously the people that live on this side are better off. I think that kind of shows that these people on this side are privileged, whereas where they at, they're struggling and they need to move to be able to make it. Does the problem get resolved by assimilating to social norms? I wouldn't say so. Whose broad social interests are served? I think with these questions wants to see if ultimately you're having privilege one way or another. And I think aside from the snakes represent the cops that were be able to get bribed. Those could say that, yeah, they were served in order to get what they needed to get. But I think this text is really well made and it's not really trying to say these people are better than these other people. What roles are given to women, people of color, the working class and poor, and the differently able? Is this problematic? Well, the mom is viewed as, you stay home, take care of the kids while dad goes find a job. Um, Generally, I don't think that's something negative, but if you think about the feminist movement, that could be viewed as that's not what we should be doing. Women shouldn't have to be the ones staying home with the kids. They should be the ones that can go out and get a job and that watches the kids. So I could see that there. But overall, I don't think anybody's put down. The people of color, the working class, yes, the people that are coming over, the Mexicans are the people of color, and they're viewed like they're poor and they need to be able to do this to survive. And in this case, I do not feel it's problematic because it's showing through depiction of what happens. It's not meant to show that one people are better than the other. Culture, what areas of the world are illustrated? You can see the desert. So Mexico has all kinds of different what you call it, they have forests, they have the beach, they have different climates and ecologic systems, but overall you see the desert. So for a student that has never been on the desert, that will be something new to them. Those animals, the land being so dry, not trees, not having like much water around, that's something different. Are the regions homogenized? Does the book discuss Latin America or Colombia, Africa, or Sierra Leone? I actually do not remember that part. No, I'm sorry. It didn't talk about Latin America as a whole. It was talking about Mexico. But I don't remember it actually never saying specifically an area of Mexico or just talking about Mexico. Like, but I don't think it took too much to speak about that area or those people in a homogenized way. Does the text resist romanticizing or stereotyping cultures? I think so. Again, I mean, this is not the story for everyone, but this is a story for a lot of the immigrants that come over. So I think it was well done. Does the story present fake lore, or in other words, an original story set in the culture of a generalized region? I don't think so. Does the story have deep roots in the history and traditions of a given people? I wouldn't say that it had deep roots on their history or traditions, because it didn't seem to talk about that necessarily a lot, but it shows like a real problem, and it did show some of the traditions, like they're gonna do a fiesta and what kind of foods do they have, what kind of activities they do, the culture part of like all the friends come together and are a big family and help each other. They don't just leave you off to your own. So I think it shows some of those things appropriately. Does the book mock language and culture? No. The words, I am fluent in Spanish, and all the words that were used appropriately to replace what the word would have been in English, but nothing was used to mock it or in a wrong way. Does the language help create a certain image or representation of a people? I believe so. I think they included those words to kind of show more of the culture, but I don't think it was in a negative way. I think it was in a correct way. Does the book promote respect for the language and culture? Yes. Is the dialogue forced and clunky with literal, non-idiomatic translations that will be confusing to a native speaker? I do not think so. I think because I use these words, the vocabulary words, to kind of fill in those gaps, I think it would be very understood easily by other cultures. And again, because the strategy that we use, you could implement confusing post-its. I think that would have been an opportunity to clarify any questions they had. Does the language flow naturally in both original and translation? Well, this was mostly English, but it had some words in Spanish, and I purposely did not translate those words in English because I feel that will empower more my Spanish speakers in the classroom, and that could spike conversations they could later have with their classmates, like, oh, what does this word mean? And instead of me telling them their own classmates that are from Mexico or that know Spanish and can explain those words to them, will be empowered and they will be an interest on them. So I thought I purposely did not translate any of them. And a couple of times I have my girls role play and answer and explain what was mole and what was aguamiel, because I thought those were very specific things and that we should explain. And I will also in that way kind of welcome my students' culture by having them explain what those words mean instead of me looking them up and me telling them what they are. And of course I would do my homework before to see what it was, so in case nobody knew I could still say it. But generally 8th graders, I would expect them to know and have a pretty good idea. Let's see. Does the book suggest that fluency in English is more valuable or important than fluency in the native language? You know what? I'm gonna go with my gut, and I will say yes, it does. And you know why? Because most of the text was in English, and there were some words here and there in Spanish. And I know it's made for mostly Americans to understand, immigrants that come from Mexico. But at the same time, I feel that when we only use certain words, especially cultural words, we're saying, all you need to know is English to understand other people, and you just need to know these few words that are popular over there. So I don't think it was done in a negative way. But to be honest, I think it will be more powerful if the text was all the way in Spanish and the students had to translate. They had to translate the text, and they get that experience of reading it in Spanish and then doing the research to translate it and then understanding, because that will be an applicable thing. That is what the non-English or non-native English speakers have to do. That's what I had to do for a long time. You have to have dictionaries and look up the words, and you have to have friends and discuss what these words mean. And I think that will provide like another side of the story. So no, it's not always my English learners that are having to be explained to, that are having to be asked, like English is more important to know. I don't think it's done usually in a negative way, but I think we could be more purposeful to do it all the way, like backwards. Like the English speakers will be asking the English learners, what these words mean, what does this phrase mean, what exactly this looks like, what do they mean by that, like having them the other way, so you have both. I think that would be a lot more powerful and more appropriate. Is fluency in English presented more realistically as a tool? Again, it wasn't shown as a negative thing necessarily, but I think it would be more powerful to do it, like I just explained. What could this book help students understand? They could understand that a lot of immigrants come to be able to work, to be able to support their families, that they love their families, that they do not want to leave, they don't want to leave them, that their families miss them, that Hispanics are very family oriented, and their family are lots of people, uncles, cousins, grandparents, friends become family. And I think it can show the culture in a lot of different positive ways and help them kind of empathize with the wrong notions that all of them come because they're criminals or they want bad things or they don't care about their family. So I think it could open a lot of those misconceptions and clarify and help them feel that others more welcome and not like you just want to take things away from me like some people do. What are the limitations of this book? I think I kind of spoke about that already. What could a teacher do to move beyond the limitations of the text? So a couple of things that I plan on doing, and then when I started, I kind of got carried on and forgot to do, was to make connections. So for example, some of the students, it was mentioned on the context that they like to play sports like soccer and be a gymnast. So when it was talking about they being so exhausted, I kind of wanted to take an opportunity to make a connection and say, hey, you guys know when you're playing soccer or football or practicing gymnastics for a long time, you're just so tired. Well, that's how he felt after walking for so long and working so hard. He was so exhausted. Kind of wanted to make that connection. Another one that I thought about was one of the kids or a few of the kids are part of the chess club. So if I could make a connection by saying, you know, sometimes when you're playing a game or you're doing something with somebody, you got to think about what's your opponent thinking. So to explain the relationship between the coyote and the boy, which was the rabbit, I should say, the rabbit and the boy, if the rabbit was thinking, what is the coyote thinking? What does he get out of this? What are his intentions? Like if he's one step ahead thinking what the other person actual plans are, that might have been smarter. So I wanted to make that connection with the students that play chess, because when you're playing chess, before you move, before you make a decision, before you get your foot away, like in the story, you gotta think about, what is the other person gonna do next? What is gonna be their next move, their next action? And choose wisely, thinking ahead like that. So I wanted to make that connection, but again, I kind of forgot. The fact that I explained the vocabulary and the strategies and I have them posted, I think that would have helped my special ed students, my English learners, my students that need graphic organizers, and all of that. I also prepare a lot of questions ahead of time so I could take pauses where I thought were important parts of the book that I should discuss and take a moment to help them think about. And I often said, go pair up with your partner and think about it for a minute or two. And then I was only wait like a second because I just wanted to kind of show you on the read aloud that that's something I would have done in class. But for the purpose of the video, I just did it fast. Okay, let me see what's next. Okay, so I'm sharing the screen now. I think this is gonna make it easier to continue. So I just discussed, I just did the introduction at first, then I did this part here about the cultural response text checklist, and now I'm gonna do this one. So discuss bullet points 2 and 3. Reflection about how the lesson plan explicitly addresses student background, culture, skills, academic language development, interests, or special needs. So actually what I just mentioned about incorporating what their hobbies are, what their interests, chess, soccer, gymnastics, all of that, I think that's how I would have addressed this section right there. I did something that I did do was when I had them ask, or I asked them who can tell me what mole is, who can tell me what aguamiel is, and those are ways I brought those people, or those students that have the background or the cultural background to answer those questions and feel like, you know, I have a part here. And the special needs, again, what I just said about the vocabulary, having graphic organizers, having pictures, color coding, post-its, just different tools to help them. And of course, if that's not good enough, I will pull them in a small group and work with them as well. Connections between classroom context, the learning objective, and scaffolds embedded within the many lessons. I think I kind of just spoke to all of that as well. Some of the scaffolds would have been, first I ask, and then I kind of make it a bigger picture or a bigger question. I start by little and then kind of make it bigger. Okay, let's move on. Communicating the learning objective and purpose of the mini lesson in multiple ways and in a language the students can comprehend. I did explain it and I show the posters. We had this posted in the classroom and I explained what the objective was in the beginning and also at the end, and I kind of make some comments throughout also, like, oh, maybe this is a part you want to put a question mark or this or that. The content is delivered in a clear, concise way that demonstrates the teacher's accurate understanding of the content. I believe so. I kind of, by going over it a little bit and asking students to explain back, I verify whether they understood or not. But at the same time, I don't want to go over forever to make it so long and confusing. The content, opportunities are provided for students to ask questions about the learning objective and or purpose of the lesson. I think I did that. And if I forgot, I don't think I forgot, but I normally do that all the time. Like, I would explain. So we're doing this, then this, and then this. Who can tell me what are we doing? And I have somebody else repeat it. And if I see somebody talking, then I will pick somebody from that table. Okay, somebody from this table, explain to me again, what are you supposed to be doing? And typically I do it again, especially for the little ones. Maybe the olders, I wouldn't do it so many times, but especially with the little ones, I will be like, all right, so after you do this, you're gonna do what? Okay, so are you gonna do this next? No, you're gonna do this other thing. So I kind of question them a lot just to ensure that they really understand what is happening and why and how they're doing it. Opportunities are provided for students to ask questions about the content, yes. Again, for the read aloud, I kind of rush through it a little bit, but typically I do take it a little slower. And I ask them questions, but I also allow them to ask me questions. And they will raise their hand. And sometimes if it's not appropriate at that time, I would tell them wait until the end and then we'll ask questions. Just take a note right now and we'll go back to it after. Especially if I know that I have 2 or 3 students that are constantly asking, but the majority are like ahead of that already. Well, I will prefer them to take notes and then at the end I go over it with them because it will be more helpful for them also to just be one-on-one. Okay. Teacher has planned and implemented at least 3 questions that elicit higher order thinking. So the questions I asked were, have you ever planted anything that grows food, like a vegetable or fruit? Oh, can someone teach us what's mole? Can someone tell us what's aguamiel made out of? Have you ever been so excited? This is one I think that would have been higher thinking. Have you ever been so excited about something that you planned and then it didn't happen? How did you feel? And then kind of make that connection. That's how the boy felt when his dad didn't show up for the party. At some point, I also asked, do you think the coyote is trustworthy? And is he really going to help, or is he trying to take advantage of the boy? I think that was another one that would have got them thinking. I don't think that's something they would just start on their own typically. They would just kind of go along, but I kind of made them stop and think about that possibility. I also asked, when you say beat down and your tail between your legs, what does it actually mean? When you have your tail between your legs, if you don't have a tail, what does it actually mean? And I thought that was so important to go over because especially for students from other cultures, they might never heard that before and they may just be thinking, well, I don't have a tail. So what does that mean? Like, you know, so we kind of discussed that. So I thought that was also a little bit more out there. Those were kind of my main questions, but I would have probably asked more for the writing response, like, what would you have done if your dad, if that was you, if you were the boy and your dad didn't show up? Do you think it's safe for you to go onto the desert by yourself and cross the border all alone with a stranger? And all those kinds of questions, like, what do you think the snakes represent in the story? So I would have taken it a whole another level had I had more time and the right audience. Teacher uses wait time to ensure students have sufficient think time before taking responses. Like I mentioned, I normally would. For the read aloud, I kind of rush a little bit, but yes, I did let them think about it too. And sometimes my daughters did answer. Because I didn't read it with them before, so we read a little bit, but I didn't discuss it. So the questions it was the first time I was asking those questions, and their answers were very genuine. Teacher uses scaffolding that supports students' responses to questions Teacher uses scaffolding that supports student responses to questions with peers. Okay, I had to pause to kind of think about that question. But yes, I believe I did because I gave them time, I gave them pictures, I gave them the post-its, I gave them the questions or different prompts to talk about it. And sometimes I let them also come up with it on their own. I think something I could have also done or I should do is create sentence frames for them to communicate with each other. I think that would be another way to support them, especially as a scaffold for students that may be low academically, kind of guide them on how to respond and how to ask questions. Okay, these activity assignment and materials are aligned with the learning objectives and clearly support their attainment. I believe so. The warm-up connects the current lesson to student prior knowledge. Yes, the warm-up was going over the vocabulary that we have learned before. The lesson follows a logical sequence that incorporates I do and some combination of we do, y'all do, you do. I think so. I don't think I show that on the read aloud. But for example, when I mentioned that I would have done this before, I would have made lots of examples. I'm sorry, not that one, this one. I would have made lots of examples of what will be an important line. What will be something that surprised me? What will be something I really liked? Like I would have do lots of examples just myself at first. Then I would have done it with them as an activity. And then when it's their turn to do the write and response, that will be when I'm releasing them to do it on their own. The lesson is placed in a way that maintains engagement, but also sufficient thinking response, I think so, and time for practice. The lesson objectives are aligned to the standard communicated at the beginning and end of the lesson, yes. Students are provided an opportunity to reflect on their progress toward their learning goal. I don't think I did that. An opportunity to reflect on their progress toward the learning goal. Not throughout the read aloud, that wasn't demonstrated there. But we would have gone over that when we're writing. When we're going over the feedback and how to write, I would have done more lessons about how to give feedback and how to find what you're missing and how to make a better edit, revise before your publishing time. Now, use your reflection on your interactive read aloud to discuss the points in proficiency will look like. Okay, I just did that. 3A, 3B, and 3C. Okay, let me pause to find my place. Okay, yes, I just confirmed I just went over those. It's just it's showing a little wonky here, so it's hard to read sometimes. So next, teacher supports the small group development of the mini lesson by actively participating in development of learning objectives and deciding upon materials. I think I did that very well with this, having post-it notes, creating charts, and also I would definitely pull aside my lower students that may not be able to do the assignment on their own, the write and response, and work with them one-on-one or as a small group so they can, successfully accomplish what the goal is also. Teacher supports the implementation of the lesson by actively engaging as part of the co-teaching team. I'm not 100% what does that mean, so let me read this. The teacher participates actively in professional collaboration via co-planning, co-teaching, providing construction. Oh, yes, of course, I would discuss with whatever teacher is available to me what my plans are and if they have suggestions how to make it better. I will definitely I typically do offer my help and try to stay positive and to help each other. Teacher assumes a leadership role while building upon the strengths of others. Yes, honestly, not to sound like bragging or anything, but I am one of those people that I consider myself a born leader. And even on situations that I'm the new, like for, the newbie teacher, I still find myself often trying to lead different initiatives and different programs or activities because it's just in me. Like I see something needs improvement, and nobody's taking it over, then I'm like, all right, let's do this, let's do that. Who wants to collaborate with this or that? So yes, I find myself that I do that often. Use the guiding questions below to reflect on your interactive read aloud in relation to the indicators for 4B above. You do not have to answer each question. They are meant to guide your discussion in relation to the bullet pointed items a proficiency could look like. Does your reflection clearly describe the following? How did things go in Read Aloud? What were strengths and what were challenges of creating your Read Aloud? I think one of the main challenges was the time crunch. Like, it wasn't all the way genuine, because in a classroom, of course, I will have lots of more time and I could allow more questions. I could allow more time for thinking. I could do more activities. But given the circumstances, I think I did well. How did you address any challenges? I used my daughters as guinea pigs as my students, and they actually were great. And at one point, I'm not sure if you read if you listen to my Read Aloud, 1 second. I because my youngest had already heard part of the story, I asked, what do you think it's going to happen next? Do you think the coyote is going to take advantage, or if he's actually going to be helpful? And she's like, yeah, I think he's going to do this and this and that, and then he's going to try to eat him and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no, but you know what? Instead of panicking, I was like, you know what? Have you read this book before? And she's like, yes. I'm like, all right, well, let's not spoil it for everyone else, and let's just not tell that what's going to happen next yet. And I thought that was better to keep on the video, because I thought that was very genuine. And if I had a student in the classroom that does know the story already and accidentally kind of wants to tell me already what's the end and ruin it for everybody else, I mean, not ruin it like a negative thing, but not let me go process by process like I'm trying before we get there, I would just address it that way. Okay, well, we're not there yet, so let's wait for that part, or something like that, and move on, not make like a huge deal out of it. If there were things that could have been better, explain what you could have done things differently to participate more professionally and productively. Well, honestly, I think I did everything I could, and I would love any feedback on whatever I could make better, or any suggestions of what could I do differently. But given the time, and I tried to be as creative as I could and incorporate as much as I could without being overwhelming, and I think I did well. But of course, I will love feedback. You're the teacher, and it's always better when somebody else can review your work and let you know how to be better. All right, thank you. I hope this satisfied everything that I was supposed to do, and if somehow I missed something, because it's kind of moved around and I don't know, please let me know. I believe honestly that I tried to go above and beyond on a lot of things, just because that's just my personality of perfectionism. But if there is anything that I missed, please let me know. And thank you so much. Have a good rest of your weekend or week. Bye.